Just a quick update on what's going on at the PLC professor at PLC University. I'm in the process of downsizing. The manuals have been updated. So the orange and black for, we'll call it 500, RS Logix 500, MicroStarter Lite. There's only two manuals. You see three, but there's only two because 44 and 46 are the same manual, but 46 comes with a memory stick with software on it, MicroStarter Lite on it, and manufacturer's manuals. The RS Logix Studio 5000 have both been upgraded, more content added. Of course, the price went up because the printer upped their prices, plus there's another 20% or so pages. So each of these manuals have about 250 pages, so I've added content. And then, of course, the advanced lab project manual that's not been updated lately and probably will not be, but everything in there will pretty much port over to what's current. The only exception might be that the motion project that's in this manual is with the older hardware. The graphical user interface or configuration software still works pretty much the same, but you'll see the screens change a little bit. But we're not going to update that green and black manual. These three right here are already updated. Connected Components Workbench for Micro 800. And then, of course, we are still providing the kit for the Digital Field Device Simulator. And we've now added the Analog Field Device Simulator as a kit. And we are fully stocking those. As far as the manuals and the kits go, that's all we're doing right now. We're downsizing. Maybe we'll pick up some stuff later. In the meantime, though, to clean up my shelves, I have put some of my training equipment that I either never used or seldom used. It's on my shelf. It's all good stuff. And it's not serving me any purpose. It's just taking up shelf space. So this particular one it looks like it's a Sane Smart, I can't remember the exact brand, but it's a 3-axis CNC table that came with NEMA 17 stepper motors. What you see here, though, are 3 AMCI fully integrated 2 Ethernet port plug-and-play stepper motors. These sell used on eBay for about $740, $750 a piece. So the price on this is based on those 3 steppers. Plus, if you go to eBay and look at what I'm selling, you'll see a lot of pictures. I've added end of arm travel, or I should say over travel switches on both the table and the horizontal axes. And I have home switches on all 3 axes. And it's all conveniently wired into a terminal strip on the back. So all you have to do is plug in these 3 Ethernet cables to an Ethernet switch, download the AMCI software, go online with them, configure them for whatever IP addresses you want, and whatever you want for the inputs and outputs. So each of these 3 stepper motors has a cable coming to this section right here. So some of it's for power, but in the images in here, you will see diagrams that show what these connections are for. So you see here you have DC common, you have DC power aux, and main. The difference is one of them you can put an e-stop in series with, then you've got a couple of inputs that you configure in the software. So that's a piece of train equipment. I was stripping the stepper motors off of here and selling them separate, but I decided there might be somebody out there doing training or wants to learn to do motion, and why tear this apart after all the work of putting it together? I never used it. So everything's brand new. It's just dusty. There's many other things on here. I'm not going to go through all of these, just the ones for training. Okay, this is one of the original MicroLogix 1000 training stations that had 6 inputs and 4 outputs. 2 of these LEDs right here, these are push buttons. The red and the green, they're push buttons wired in parallel or series, I guess you could say, with input 0 and input 1 for the 4 state inputs. And then you've got outputs 2 and 3 are just straight up outputs. This is a Micrologix 1000 L10, and it comes with a power adapter, 24 volts DC. It's got the cable, the driver for the cable, and it's got a jump drive with everything on it that you need except the manuals. You need to buy the orange and black manuals. So I may sell this, I may not, but I don't need it. This is something else that might be of interest. This is everything that you need to do motion control from a training standpoint with ControlLogix. So this is a Circos card right here. This is a Circos drive, Kinetic Circos drive. Here are the two fiber optic cables that go from the fiber optic connections down the bottom of this card up here, transmit, receive. And here's the cables that you need, one for feedback and one for power, and they connect into these two motors. And then you have a THK linear slide that you can operate back and forth. Now this module plugs into a 1756 chassis. So if you have a ControlLogix chassis, 1756, you can plug this in here and you can go and program motion, configure the drive and everything. Now you could also use this with other platforms, but everything is here to use it with 1756. I'm also going to sell my conveyor that I had sitting on the shelf behind me. I've run it maybe 10 minutes. I had it hooked up to a PowerFlex 525 drive. You can see the motor leads are still there. These sell for about $1,600, $1,700 without the side rails and without the mounting brackets that you see. I've also added a coupler so you can hook this up to an encoder if you want. And I'm throwing in with it this item. So this mounts down towards the tabletop, and then this couples to that flex coupler. And then you can wire this up to whatever you have, high-speed counter, etc. So this is a perfect little training conveyor. They don't make them any smaller. It's the smallest mini mover that they make. This is a LC50 48 QBB. If you're familiar with a QBB, it gives you the most flexibility of the LC50s as far as motion goes, axes of motion. And I have it connected to and I realize it's dusty. It's been sitting on the shelf behind me as a prop because I never really used it much, but it's in perfect working order. So I have this connected, this LC50 connected up to a digital field device simulator. Like I said, it's dusty, but it's brand new. I only flipped the switches enough to test my wiring. And what I did here was I have intermittent terminal blocks between the digital field device simulator and this unit, simply so I can connect other things in if I wanted to, just for test purposes and training purposes. So the price for this is based on these, typically $400 or $500 if they're pre-built by me, and then I don't know what this controller sells for, but believe me, the price is reasonable if you need this kind of thing for training. I also have a prototype that I built with the LC70, and you see it's just in a plain box with no printing on it, hand drilled, and I have 8 inputs. I think it's 8 inputs, and then I have some outputs over here. So I believe that these 4 push buttons right here are wired in series with these 4 toggle switches to give you the 4 state inputs that I normally supply on my equipment: maintained on, maintained off, momentary off, momentary on. But this is an LC70, and the price is a little bit better on this because that's a prototype box down there. It works fine. But rather than tear this stuff all apart just to sell the processors, I thought, well, I'll put it on eBay hooked to the boxes. You can always make an offer below what I listed it for, and then I'll decide whether it's easier just to take the controller off and sell it separate or whatever. I also have one power supply left, a PA72 Rev B for 1756 chassis. I have one 7-slot chassis left, and I have 3 L61 processors. So if you purchased the power supply, the chassis, and one processor, and then you also purchased the servo system, this servo system, along with the chassis, the power supply, and the processor. And of course, you got to have the license for RS Logic Studio 5000. You're all set to learn motion. As I said, the stuff's got some dust on it, and I thought I would try it this way first, then break it all apart and sell it. Thank you. In case I didn't mention, my eBay channel or store, whatever you want to call it, is iwannacj.